interested in the place where I sit between all this. Charlamagne has been a great guy and has served as a mentor to me. Someone who is transparent without a shadow of a doubt, has talked me through things that he knew I would run into, giving me the heads up on business stuff. Someone who just being able to be within his vicinity to have a conversation with him, I have learned more. And I've always said that. When I first met Charlamagne, I never asked for a job. I never asked for anything. I knew I was going to be me in some way, shape, or form by myself. But I wanted someone who could probably help me avoid certain mistakes that maybe they've either had or they've seen other people had. And he's been someone like that. So I that's my guy. Let me put everything in perspective of what he's saying. And this is where I think about a lot of this. And I'm going to play someone with Joe did a spine thing. The most successful black media personality, if you ask me today, if we are not counting Wendy Williams, is Charlamagne the God. I could understand how he felt slighted by Joe when Joe went on rants, basically saying, "Oh, he's working for a white corporation. He don't own nothing." I will tell you beyond the shadow of a doubt, Charlamagne is the most successful by far. It's not close with him and whoever you might think is number two. And I say that with no caveat with it, with no fucking disclaimer. He's way more successful, media-wise, I'm only talking media-wise, than anybody else within the space. Don't tell me I'm bugging. I know it. I see the business. I know this. We're not talking about Oprah. We're talking about within the hip-hop cultural space. I'm telling you what it is. We're not talking about Steve Harvey. By the way, that's the thing. Somebody like him, if he's thinking about people to compete with, it should be Steve Harvey. Because I'm telling you, within hip-hop, he is so far ahead. The nigga is writing books. He's putting out other people's books. Okay? The nigga has, was it 2-time New York Times bestseller? He's been on that like multiple times. Not only that, done a bunch of shows, has the biggest radio show still for 10 years. Like, we're going to get to talking about Drake and his accomplishment, but for 10 years, this motherfucker has had the biggest radio show. I get it. You might say radio's not whatever. Really successful podcast. Has a Comedy Central joint coming up. Bro, it's not even close. I'm fair with everything I say. Y'all should know. He's on a different level. Now, I look at it because I want to compete with everybody, including him. He's putting the work for 10 plus years on a professional level. I always say I've been in this for 10 years, but 10 years it took me to even, I felt like I went pro like 2017, 2018. I feel like I'm 4 in. So I look at people like him and I say he's doing everything he needs to do. So once the Comedy Central is dead as fuck, bro, don't try to knock another nigga's accomplishment, bro. I'm just telling you what's happening. Because I'm telling you his accomplishment because I wouldn't want nobody to knock me doing everyday struggle and be like, oh, Complex is dead as fuck. Nigga, I did that shit. What's the problem? It's like somebody knocking Joe's accomplishment and be like, oh, Revolt's dead as fuck. No, the nigga did that shit. Don't do that. Don't do that. I'm just telling you currently, and I do think if you ask me, I'm not trying to psychoanalyze him, but I probably am. He probably did feel a way when when the consensus, at least when Joe was going off of his rants, was it felt like it was almost diminishing what Charlamagne did because he's not an owner, blah, 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 blah. And again, he's an owner in a bunch of stuff, but yeah. So I understand him with that. On the flip side, when it comes to Joe, because I hear Charlamagne say this, and by the way, I have personal and private conversation with both of them. So, it's not, and whatever I say here, I always am down to back up privately, whatever. I love both. I think this is where the divide is with Charlamagne and Joe. When Charlamagne says, hey, I don't think Joe may know the business the way you think he does, I think that's true and not true. That's true in the sense of, well, if you keep getting in these scenarios, you don't. I think it's not true because I don't think Joe is approaching, I don't think Joe is approaching business, even in podcasting, like how the average or regular person would. I think he's trying to change the rules. I think Joe is trying to make podcasters basically have leverage or have rights as independent artists, which that's not how it's seen. So that's what I'm telling you. I'm split with it. When Joe is talking, everything he said about Spotify, even while I was at Complex, how he was approaching Complex, he's approaching it like a artist that just dropped a hit record, and this is how it should happen, and also these are the rights that should be protected if you have that leverage early on in the game. The rap game and the music game been going on for a long while. This podcast resurgence is quite new. So Joe is looking at people to say, hey, I don't want to do business like how other people are doing business. I want to change the business model because I'm that hot this early. I don't know if y'all understand that. And by the way, I don't ever want to make y'all feel like y'all stupid because I know y'all smart. But this is where I agree with both. A lot of things that I look at Joe and I'm like, I would never do that. I look at it as him trying to change the industry because he believes he's early and new and quick to the top of an industry that he could change, as opposed to music. By the time he got there, shit was set in stone. So, to give an example, in the music industry, when you sign to a label and you drop album A, B, and C, they own the rights to that forever, whether you're on the label or not. I think Joe's business sense in terms of changing that model within podcasting is that, yo, you ain't gonna own this shit. You're essentially licensing it, and when I'm ready to leave or renegotiation comes up, I could take the whole shit with me. So this is why I wouldn't stamp that comment that Charlamagne is saying in that Joe doesn't know business. I think Joe does know business, but I think the way Joe's going about podcast business is that he's going about it as being a trailblazer and he's trying to write new rules. Just like how Dave Chappelle wrote new rules when he signed away his rights to Comedy Central. Comedy Central licensed his show to Netflix, and he threw, I'm just calling it a hissy fit, and Comedy Central dropped the show, and Netflix dropped the show, and Comedy Central had to go to him and basically work out a deal that he could own the shit. I feel like I'm getting too in depth here. But anyway, I believe that was the end of his response. I'll get to what Joe said in a second.
The story is,
she came out like, nigga, he ain't do shit. What the fuck y'all talking about? And then they got mad at her. What the fuck? So was that a smear campaign, or was that just people who don't like you and you like, nigga, I got a lot of people that don't like me. I maybe have equal the amount of people that don't like me that do like me. Same with Joe. Joe, you have burned every building down as you've gone on your way. You've told people who support you, random other people, suck your dick, this, that, and third. People do want to see you fail. Same with me, same with Charlamagne. And when one thing starts to gain traction, everybody else brings out the other shit they got against you. So I don't know if it's a orchestrated smear campaign or just the mere fact that, hey, niggas don't like you. Bro, the moment I slip, you'll hear all type of weird shit about me. Yo, I try to do this, he try to do that. So that's why I'm trying to say, I think Joe is so much in the belief that Charlamagne started this. Joe, some of these motherfuckers who wanted to speak out about you before probably thought if they spoke out before, your audience was going to get them clapped up. Nobody will listen. Their opinion didn't matter until you seem to be down. Now everybody has an ear to what other people that are having accusatory remarks about you might say. Let me keep listening. I personally believe y'all got a beef that is beyond what the general person who watches y'all could comprehend. I think y'all beefs really started over Tahiry. I really want to believe that. I still believe that to this day. I believe because of maybe Joe's treatment to Tahiry or whatever the case is, Tahiry used to be a frequent person or someone who has been on at least once or twice on Charlemagne's podcast, Brilliant Idiots, when it just started. I do believe there was some friction there. When Joe went up to the Breakfast Club, Joe was always getting grilled about domestic violence accusations, and I could imagine he's looking at Charlamagne like, bro, you my nigga, why you talking about that shit so much and grilling me when I ain't come here to talk about that and shit? Like, bro, you know, when a man is accused of that, whether he was completely innocent or not, it's hard to kind of get that shit away from him. I think they have a secret private beef that has evolved into a lot of other things. I think it turned to business beef when Joe was basically kind of doing his Dame Dash shit, talking about ownership, blah, 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 and also then kind of made Charlamagne to look like he was weak. Now, Charlamagne did comment on Joe first in terms of that business dealing, but bro, he's on Breakfast Club. You got to comment on everything that's popular. And I think Charlamagne was only commenting not to hate on Joe. I think he was trying to comment just to say, hey, yo, Joe, you saying certain stuff about business that could lead young people into really fucked up positions. And I agree with that too, because a lot of shit that Joe be talking about business-wise, if you're not Joe Budden, that's not going to happen. If you're not Joe Budden, that's not going to happen. So I can understand why Charlamagne is like, hey, I'm going to just give a counter example and to even this out, then I can see why Joe's like, whoa, nigga, you're making me look more or less credible. So anyway, I hope they deal with whatever issues they got, bro. I don't know. All right. Is there anything else? Don't need to